So, one question is, what kind of jobs did people do when you began working?
What kind of
Yeah,
job?
like what kind of jobs happened? Uh, yeah, what kind of jobs existed then compared to what kind of jobs existed now, and that type of thing.
Do you want me to go clear back 35 years when I started
But
working
yeah,
on cars?
like when you started working, I would say altogether. Like when you first had a paying job.
Well, with the electronic age, there's been a lot of changes with that, especially with the automobiles. Most cars, if they had any electronics on them, it was very few when I first started working on cars. Now they have just a ton of electronics to the point where there's, I guess, networks and computer systems basically on there, like you would even think they network over the internet. They've got several computers that talk to each other on most cars nowadays. That's probably been the biggest change as far as the auto industry. As far as personnel, um, I remember when I first started, we had to handwrite everything on pieces of paper, whether it be the work that we had performed and finished, or when we punched in, we had to punch in on a time clock, an actual punch card to do a time clock, stuff like that. And that's changed dramatically because now we have a computer terminal in almost every bay that a tech would work in.
Yeah.
When I first started working, there was my dad hadn't even bought his first Apple computer, and so most computers were not even really thought about a whole lot
Yeah.
because they hadn't come in. So really, it's the technology that's changed probably the most with and the communications that we had with people and people in the shop have changed kind of dramatically too, because we had a central phone and a central dispatch when I first started working, where if you needed to make a phone call, you would have to go to a phone that hung on the wall, and if you needed to talk to a customer, that's the only way you could do it.
And you all shared one that just was there.
And we all in the shop shared one with our guy that dispatched the work out. So that's been a really big thing. Now we can almost talk to each other, and we can talk to, let's say that if I had a question to ask another tech from, say, another dealership, I could just call him on his cell phone and say, hey, have you run into this condition? On the cell phone, I don't have to go find a phone, find the number, look it up, and then call, and then wait for him to come to his phone. So things like that have changed. Just the other day, I was able to call one of my good friends that I worked with about 25 years ago when I was with Chrysler. I just called him up, and I had a question on a Chrysler. He was able to just, within a couple of minutes, I was able to get some information
Yeah.
that he had. So those things have changed a lot.
That's cool. How have people's attitudes about their place of employment changed? Or like how were they then compared to now?
I don't know if for what other people thought, it may have been the same attitude as I had, but when I was working at Larry Miller in Murray at the Chrysler place, after I'd been there for 5 years, I guess, I felt like I was obsolete. I mean, not obsolete. I was irreplaceable. That's what
Yeah.
I was feeling like I was irreplaceable. Like nobody else could do the job I did.
Right.
And now I think it's kind of the opposite. I feel very replaceable, and the job doesn't feel as secure, I suppose. And so my attitude has changed a little bit that way. I think some of the guys in the shop that are technicians kind of do the same thing, but it may be change of age rather than just the style of technology
Yeah.
or time has passed for the auto industry. I don't know. It could be just my age that has changed.
Yeah. I get you.
Changed that part of it. I don't know. So, attitude. We felt like we needed. The benefits were a big deal, but they're even more of a big deal now.
Yeah.
They're a huge deal now.
No,
And
it's really
health
important.
insurance is even bigger than it was then, I think.
Yeah.
To be able to have somebody give you a good premium health insurance that doesn't cost a whole lot but brings you a lot, and it's just not happening anyway. It's not happening. So it seemed like we got more benefits, more out of our health insurance back then
Yeah.
for the money that we were paying. As compared to now, we're paying a ton of money and we get less. Feels like we get less for our dollar. That feels like it's changed a lot.
Okay. So one thing we talked about in class, kind of along similar lines, right? It used to be people would feel a lot of loyalty towards where they work, and so they wouldn't change where they work for, their whole lives.
Back in the 80s, 90s?
Well, even before then. That's one thing that we talked about. I didn't live it, so I don't know. Would you agree, or?
I think loyalty, as far as people staying with companies, has changed a little bit. I think people that were working in the 60s had a little bit more loyalty towards their companies that they were working for than they do now, as a general rule. I don't know how much that's really changed, though, because I didn't see a lot of people just hire on and then quit within a month, and I see that all the time now.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's changed a lot, but it's hard to say, because I've been one of the ones that were brought up that you get a job, you work hard for it, and if you do, they will treat you well enough that you'll want to stay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've done.
Yeah. I get you.
But I'm one of maybe 3, 4 that have been there as long as I have.
Right. Yeah. I get you. So it could just be a generational thing. That's just how you're raised.
It could be. It could be. I mean, I see a lot of kids, 20s, in their 20s, that, man, they get into a job and they're with it for a month and then they're gone.
Yeah.
Because they don't like it. They don't think that it's good enough for them. The pay is not good enough, or something, and so they bounce from job to job to job to job. And maybe that's a loyalty thing. I really don't know. I think it's more of a narcissistic attitude. I deserve better than this, and I know I can get better, so they're never satisfied with what they have.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say that. Say
what they're thinking exactly. Yeah, I get you. So, do you feel like management styles have changed?
Yeah. I think it's changed. It feels like it's more service by what I say rather than what I do. Management says a lot of things now, and that's maybe just my perspective, but I've heard it from some of the guys that I've been in the business a long time with too. It feels like the company now is not as loyal to its employees.
Mm-hmm.
They say they are,
right,
but it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of that maybe. Back when I started with Larry Miller back in the 80s, the early 80s, about 84, I think, or 84 or 85, Larry Miller would come to our Christmas parties. He'd come to our summer party, and it was a big shebang. He would pay for everybody's way into either Lagoon or Seven Peaks Water Resort or something like that, and it was a full-fledged. He bought the whole thing, and now we're lucky to get even a Christmas party, and it feels kind of lame. And we don't. And now that I work with Ken Garf, we don't see the Garf guys. We don't see the owners hardly ever. When I first started with him, saw him a little bit more. But Larry, when I first worked with Larry Miller, I'd watch him walk through the shop.
Yeah.
He'd come through the shop and shake people's hands. So I don't know if that's changed a lot, or maybe it's just. But I've worked with two great big. They're fairly large corporations that have been in the automotive business, and it feels like they've both gone the same way. They've kind of removed themselves. The upper echelon of the people that own it are further removed away from the people that are working, the blue collar workers. They don't care as much because they're so big. They can't.
Yeah.
They can't make it around to all of them because they're so big.
To follow up with that, do you think that would be why it seems like they're not as present? Because if they were smaller, they could visit everyone.
I know that makes a big difference. How can you get to every individual when you've got over 100,000 employees? How do you make it to every individual? And back then, they may have had 10,000 employees, and it was a little easier to get to everybody over a year's period of time, possibly. I don't know. Now Garf has got over 20. No, they've got 20 dealerships in Utah, but they've got more outside of Utah. And back when I started with Miller's, he had five when I started with him. And so I'm sure that makes some kind of a difference.
Right. But it also doesn't feel like there's an effort.
Yeah. I mean, there are times that I still feel a little bit of loyalty, but it's more from the management that's right above me because I'm working more one-on-one with them.
Right.
And so, because they feel like I put my heart and soul into the work,
right,
whatever I might be doing, they're willing to go more of an extra mile for me. And, it seems like there's more rules and regulations now that it feels almost micromanaged, your time that you're with the company now, and before it didn't. It feels really micromanaged. All the things you do feels more micromanaged, especially with insurance and stuff like that. So I don't know. But yeah, does that answer it?
Yeah, no, I get you. I agree. Let's see. So I kind of want to just follow up with that same kind of train of thought. That one-on-one management where it's like you and then the next level, do you feel like that relationship and that communication style has changed?
It's probably changed a little bit, but I still feel like I get the feeling sometimes that the manager that's just above me, that actually manages me, is managed by somebody above him, and then he's managed by somebody above him. And so I'm like fourth down the row, and the managers that are in the corporation clear up at the top don't give a crap about the ones that are below the last manager.
Right.
They just tell them basically, you know what, if they don't like it, they can hit the road kind of like thing. Whereas the manager I work with, he is more personable with me and tries to make life a little bit more easy at work.
Yeah.
And that's changed over the years because these two companies that I've worked with have gotten so large that instead of having maybe one manager between me and an owner, now we've got 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And they're all doing their own criteria. And so, and it really feels like the upper management could care less. They do a lot of lip service.
Yeah.
It feels like they do all these great big banners and great big. Our employees, we consider our employees number one, but it's a sales gimmick. They're doing it to make everybody think that they really treat their employees great, so that they come and buy a car from them, and it's just bogus.
It's all just like public relations.
Yes. Yeah, it's the persona that customers see,
Yeah.
oh, if they're going to take care of their employee, they'll take care of me. I'm buying a car.
Right.
So, I don't know. But it's pretty bogus that way.
Yeah.
It really is.
That's hard. And I think that might be part of the reason that nowadays people do tend to change jobs so much is, back then there was a sense of loyalty because it was reciprocal. And now it doesn't seem like that's the case.
And you get that more with small businesses anyway. If you're with a small business and you hire on with a small business that's only got maybe one management level above you,
Yeah.
or you're in a management level where you're the only management, I can see that working much better because you become part of a family rather than just a number. So, with a big corporation, you become a number when you're down at the bottom level, blue collar workers.
Yeah.
And with the smaller businesses, to me, I look at who is it? The Acura dealerships. There's Jody Wilkins Acura dealership. He only owns one.
Mm-hmm.
But he really takes care of his employees.
Yeah.
But he's only got one dealership. If at most, he may have two.
Right.
I think he had one in Park City and then one in Salt Lake. So you know what? He takes care of his people, and he has that mentality that he wants to take care of his people like their family, and it really shows in their attitude, I think, and it shows in their work. It shows in their attitude towards work. So I don't know. It may be just big business compared to small business. I don't know whether it's a lot of, I don't know. My dad told me that you had to show loyalty for companies back in the 60s. Otherwise, you were gone.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's changed a lot or not. Maybe it's my perception, but it feels like it's changed. It feels like it's changed. It feels like, especially the big corporations, it's all lip service. They say more that we're going to take care of them, but they don't. So.
Yeah. I get you. No, I agree. That's all the questions I got, so thank you.